edge functions have a lot of limitations. There are activities that you can't do with an edge function, especially when working with AI, because of the long timeframes it can take for AI to process information and return results, sometimes not at all. I've shown how to take an app from Lovable and put it on another service in order to break free of some of the lock-in that happens in Lovable Cloud so that you can build more features and more tools into your application. But one of the pieces that I haven't shown in the past is how to move an application that has edge functions and completely take it off of Supabase and put it in a different space. The reason you would do that is because edge functions have a lot of limitations, especially in Supabase. They have time limitations, size limitations. There are activities that you can't do with an edge function, especially when working with AI, because of the long timeframes it can take for AI to process information and return results. Sometimes it has to chain tools together to be able to do that, and you can't do that very well with edge functions, sometimes not at all. So in today's example, I'm going to show you a little app that has a couple edge functions, a little bit of complexity there, and we're going to package this up, build a backend for it, and put it up on a different host so you can see the whole process end to end of how to take a more complex app and rebundle it for some other location. To start with, let me show you a quick demo of this application. This example is geared toward churches, but you could use this type of example for any sort of event, some sort of follow-up tracking. If we jump in here, it asks a name. We'll put that in here. And then in this case, we'll pick a couple options from the list. We'll put in a question here. None. Is there parking? And now it asks for an email address and phone number. And we'll submit that information. What happens in the backend? There is an admin login. It uses Supabase Auth. So we have that connection that we have to move over, especially if we're not going to use Supabase going forward, if we're going to wrap this in something else. The information goes into this little, you could call it a CRM, but it's a follow-up portal so that people can be quickly followed up with. You would use this type of concept maybe with an event tool, or in this case, like a church tool for new visitors. It has an API key. It uses OpenAI to write a follow-up message that is based on everything that they selected. Answers their questions and creates this email. The admin can go in and change the name out, adjust anything they want, change the response type, regenerate that. And then when they're ready, they can approve and send this. And this uses an email API through resend to actually send the message. So there are several pieces that make that work. If we go over here to Lovable Cloud, we can see that this has a database, a couple tables. It has user auth for the admin user, new user here. There's the admin user. And then we're not using any buckets, but we are using secrets. These are where those keys are stored. So we're going to have to move those. Most importantly, here are the edge functions. These are the ways that the app actually does things, the way it interacts with AI, the way it sends emails. These are functions that are here. So we have to repackage those in a manner that they can be hosted elsewhere. The first thing we're going to do is get a backup of our database. We're going to say make a backup of the database and save it here in a get ignored folder. Sometimes Lovable will refuse to get ignore it. That's fine. We can just download it and delete it before we push this to GitHub. Here we have the result. And as expected, it's having trouble editing this. You'll get different responses from time to time on this. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't edit the get ignore. But we have our backups of our tables here. Put them in JSON. I would like these to be SQL. So let's see if it'll do that. We'll say make an SQL backup of this database and save it for me. And now we have our backup here. So this is the full SQL of the backup. This will make it easy to import it into the new location wherever we set this up. So now we have that. Let's see if we can edit this here or if it's going to block that. We're going to add backups and save that change. I'm not seeing a clear indication that that is actually working to block this upload. What we're going to do is just protect our data, be extra safe. We're going to go here and download this file. We have a backup of that. Then we're going to reference this directory. I've copied these files elsewhere. Please delete the backups directory for safety. Now, if we go back over here, we should be able to refresh this page and the backups directory will be gone. There we are. So that is now cleaned up. Next thing we're going to do is connect this to GitHub. You'll go ahead and connect your GitHub account here if you haven't already, and then connect this project. Now that is in GitHub, so we can pull that down. Small side note here, I've noticed a few times where Lovable will create this with a public visibility. So you go into settings in the repo and scroll down and change visibility if it is set to public, just to keep your code safe there. Now that that's up in GitHub, we're going to copy it to our computer locally using GitHub Desktop. I show this process several times in other videos, so feel free to check that out if you need to see the process to pull that down locally. Then we are going to open that repo up in VS Code. Now I'm using VS Code here. You could use Cursor, you could use Windsurf, you could use Anti-Gravity, Kilo Code. The process is going to be pretty much the same no matter what. But in this case, I'm using VS Code, and we're going to be using Claude Code here for our agent to interact with this code base. The next step we're going to do is go here to source control, and we are going to go ahead and make a branch. Name this branch migration. The name doesn't matter. You can name it whatever you want. We'll publish that branch. What that allows us to do is we can now make changes to the code without affecting the Lovable app directly. So that can stay operational while we do this work, just in case you don't do it all in one sitting or you want to do some additional debugging before you push this out. The Lovable app can stay operational while you do this work. Lovable always throws the .env right out there into the repo. It's a private repo, so we're not terribly at risk there. Also, the content right now in the .env is able to be shown. It's not necessarily information that needs to be kept private. But before we do any other edits, we should go ahead and add that to our gitignore and save that. And we will sync those changes here. Now we can see we're on our migration branch, and that's our commit here. Then we'll go ahead and clean the .env out of our history. We'll run a command like this to your agent. We're using Claude Code here. We'll run this prompt here. The .env file was committed to the repo. We've added that to the gitignore. Now we need to clean it from the repo history, please. Not worried about the keys since they were public keys up to this point. We are going to be putting private keys in. Right now they're public, so it's not a big deal. We're going to clean it up. It's going to use this little tool, git filter repo, because I've done this before, so that's installed on the computer. If not, it will help you install this tool. It just runs a command then. It's going to use that to go ahead and clean out the history. Because that file was synced from GitHub, that also removes it for us here, which isn't an issue because it still exists over here in the project if we need it. So we can go back over here, grab this file, and copy those keys back over. Now we can create a new env file. Okay, that part is done. Now we're going to go ahead and start a new conversation. As always, a new chat for a new topic. So we've completed that topic. Go into a new chat, keep that context window clean. Next thing we're going to do is some discovery. So we're going to put in a prompt like this. Before writing any code, I need you to thoroughly analyze this code base and produce a summary report covering all Supabase edge functions, list each one, all Supabase database interactions, how the front end calls the back end, auth setup, any third-party services or API keys referenced in edge functions. Do not make any changes. Output only the analysis report. And we have this on ask before edits here as well, which will keep it from being able to make changes. That might take a minute to run, so go ahead and grab a coffee or do another task, and then come back and you'll see a summary like this. And it identified the edge functions, which we knew that those two existed. So that means it accurately found what we're looking for. It found our two tables that are in the database here. Here's our row level security policies. Found the pages, front end to back end communication. It recognized that Supabase auth is in use. It found the keys that we're using. That makes sense. Found some security notes that Lovable didn't check for. Those are things to fix later. We're not going to address those right now in this video. The next thing we're going to do is give it a prompt to plan our migration. We'll change this to plan mode and then give it a prompt like this one. We need to migrate this app off of Supabase entirely, changing it to an Express backend that serves the front-end static files, handles all the functions of the edge functions, uses Better Auth for auth, replacing Supabase, and can be hosted on render.com using their Postgres database and a service that will run the Express backend plus front-end together. We'll send that and let me walk you through some of the points that I bring up there. The first thing is we're going to do this on render.com. In a lot of my videos, I've shown you how to do deployments on things like AWS Amplify or Railway. For this one, we're going to use render so that you have an example of a different place to host. It's lots of options out there. This way you can see another one. For auth, we're going to use the open source package that will let us build this credential auth on our own with a pre-assembled toolkit here. So this is like Lego blocks for that feature. That's why I told it to use Better Auth. We can see it looking through to find more information to process this request. And we have it in plan mode here. It's going to write us a plan after possibly asking a few questions to make sure it doesn't make any assumptions. While that is running, let's go ahead and get ourselves a database to work with. We're in render and we've selected a new service, a Postgres database, and let's give it a quick name. It's already added to the project because we picked that option from inside the project. You can use the free version if you want. There are some limitations and it turns itself off pretty regularly, where you can grab a basic one here, which is a good place to start so you don't run into things like it being offline when you're trying to test. Everything else here you can leave as is because you can change these features later. While that database is creating itself, we're going to go back over here and check our planning progress. So this, do you need to migrate existing visitor message data from Supabase? We're going to say other. We have to migrate. I have an SQL backup file that we can import, giving it more context here. For this option, the seed script is just fine. Later on, you might add the option to add users through the user interface, but in this case, we're just going to use a seed script because we have one user. Going back to our database, it is now created here. So we're going to go down and find the URL. We have this internal database URL and external database URL. We want the external one. So we're going to copy that. And while this is running here, we're going to go back to our .env and put in database URL and paste in that URL and save it. Now that that's in place, we can see the plan here. So let's take a look and see if it makes sense. And the plan looks solid, at least a really good starting point. We're going to send this on its way and let it do the first version of this. We can always backtrack here in GitHub and not accept these changes. We can go forward here, send this on its way to do that work. In the meantime, let's get the rest of the keys that we need out of Lovable. We're going to go to Lovable Cloud, and then we're going to go over to this secrets panel. And this is where we have those keys that we need. Now, in Lovable, you cannot see the actual secrets. So if you've added an OpenAI API key, you'll need to get that from where you saved that key elsewhere. Same with your email key and your email address in this case, or any other keys. What this shows us is what keys we need to get. Even if you've misplaced these and didn't save them somewhere else, you at least know which keys you need to recreate for this migration to work. Let it install the things it needs to install here, and then open up your .env, add a new line, and paste in each of these key names. You do not need this Lovable API key. It's not something you'll be able to get. That's how they connect the front end of the app to this cloud. We will put in the rest of these keys. Once your keys are copied over, you can go back to see the progress. You can see it's made several changes so far, installed some dependencies here for us. Now we'll let it remove the Supabase stuff. Here we're going to let it go ahead and test the build. It says it's ready to finish up this migration and has some next steps. We need to collect our data here that we copied from the backup. So we'll do a new folder named backups. Let's go ahead and put that in our git ignore. We can see that that folder is now light gray, which means it is not being included in our git commit. Then just go ahead and drag over that backup file, that SQL file that you got from Lovable, and put it right here. Drop that in your backups folder. In this particular tool, we've used a lot of context. Before I proceed, I want to keep a lot of this in our memory, but give ourselves more space to work. We're going to run a compact now. Depending on the tool you're using, you may or may not be able to compact that and have it summarized. If you can't, leave this chat up, open a new chat, and copy in the piece that you need to carry the conversation forward. Now that the chat has been compacted, you can see here that it gives a summary real quick to itself. It also provides a full file of the entire chat in case it needs to be referenced again. So the compact tool is very useful for extending work on an existing task that took up a lot of context. Next, we're going to test this locally. So we want to make sure it runs with the new setup before we push that out anywhere. That way we can see the logs and debug everything. We're going to run a prompt like this. I want to test this locally against the new Postgres database, telling it that it's already in the .env file. Walk through the steps with me to provision the database with the migration, do an import of the data from our backups folder, and seed the admin user. Do not commit any passwords or user info to code. We're going to change this back to ask so we can review what it does next. It looked at the backup files. It's looking to see how that's constructed. It read the schema. All right, and it's given us the commands. We could run these commands on our own or let it run those commands. It's up to you. If you want to run them in the terminal, you can do that here. Create a terminal. The terminal location will vary based on the tool you're using, but they're all very similar. If it's a VS Code fork like Cursor or Windsurf or KiloCode, or in this case, directly VS Code, we can just copy these commands. And it wasn't able to extract that URL. So you can just copy the error right here and it'll update the command for us. We have this additional command string here that needs to be run because of the env file. We can just copy that piece for our next step. Paste that there, then grab your next command, which is to seed the database. And if you go over to render, you'll be able to go to metrics and you can scroll down the page to the tables and see that these tables were added and they weren't there before. So those are now added in. If you want to be able to edit the database visually, you can go over to apps and deploy pgadmin. It will show you any charges that are necessary for this to be running. If you don't have another database admin tool, this is a nice, easy way to get access to that. Otherwise, you can talk with the AI to edit your database and interact with it, or use some other tool out there. We have one that you can look at that's the DB Wizard, which gives you the ability to interact with the database as well if you want. This right here is just putting that interactivity in your render application. The next thing we're going to do is seed an admin user. I have a question here. I may have missed it in our process, but I did not see a users table. I'm going to ask about that first. Do we need to create a users table first? It's going to create one on its own based on the scripts in Better Auth here. Since Better Auth is going to auto create this, we've run our migration to create those tables and we've imported our data. We now need to start the server. We're going to say, give me the command to start the server front end together. And we're going to do the command that it gives us here, npm run dev. And we're going to command click, and here's our application. Then we're going to say, I've run the app, query the database, and confirm the Better Auth tables were created. As I expected, the tables aren't there, but now the AI knows that. There's this SSL connection string that's needed. And now let's see if those are created. So we'll Control C to stop the server and rerun npm run dev. Tell it restarted, check now. Just let the AI see if the tables are there. You can see here they did not show up. Once again, we'll go through this loop. And now we get to debug Better Auth a little bit. This is why you run this locally first before putting it up in any destination, so you can debug this sort of thing. Okay, let's see if it will go ahead and create those. So we're going to leave this on and open a new terminal. We'll go ahead and create the user information here. And here we go. We now have an error string So we're just debugging the auth continued here. Looks like it made an assumption about where these files needed to be. Now we are in place. We'll rerun our database seed here. And now our user is created. So let's go ahead and check it. We'll go to admin, which should do our redirect. We get an invalid origin. We can right click and inspect. See our console here. Copy this console, paste it in, and give it all the context here as well. We'll let it go ahead and fix this, restart and sign in. So we'll Control C, run it again, and sign in. We are into our app. Now we have it operating here on the machine. Let's go ahead and check our generation, make sure that connection is working, because we replaced this edge function. There we are. And we're going to change this and regenerate again. We can see that the text is changing. So now we're going to test our email sending. Email was sent. And I checked the email came through here. So now that is in place and working. Let's go ahead and get this ready to go to render. We'll say, okay, that is all now working. Please tell me the steps to deploy this on render. Database is already there. Here we go. So step 1, push your code to GitHub. You're going to follow this here. Get a commit message assembled real quick. You don't have to do this right here. If you don't want to, you can use the Git panel or you can run the command. It's telling us the message here is migration complete. I used AI to generate a little bit more robust one here. So we'll commit that and push that, then create a web service. We're going to go back to render, do new service. We want a web service because that's what it told us to do here. We need to set up our GitHub here. So we grabbed our repo and we're going to give it a build command right here, a start command right there. The runtime is Node, which it already defaulted to. We're going to put this on a starter plan. You can do again on the free if you want to, but it's going to close itself up pretty quickly. Now we need to put in our environment variables. I would add from a .env and go over and copy your .env. So once you copy that env, you can paste it in here. Now we have our variables. Now right here, this Better Auth URL, we don't have a service URL yet. Once we know what the URL is, we'll come back and change that. We already did this, and we are going to deploy this and see if it builds. I missed one step here. I did not select this branch. So we need to change the branch to this migration one or it won't work. You can do that during setup. I just missed that button. Here we go. While that's building, we can see here that it now has a URL. So we can copy this to change in our environment. But let's go ahead and make sure it runs a build here first. It's moving through the build steps here. And there is our build. It's not quite live yet. We did get a failure here, which is generally expected the first time you deploy. We're going to copy these logs and we're going to give them back to Claude and let it do a little fix here for us and sync this up. And you'll see that it automatically goes back here in a minute to redeploy. Let's go ahead and copy this and put it into our environment. Need our Better Auth URL here to change. We will save and rebuild that. We can watch this deploy. And now we have our service live. Let's take a look here. Here's our app. We'll go through it and make sure it inserts everything. And there we go. Now let's go check and see if we can log in. There's our test. Here's the information. We're checking to make sure that all our keys are in place again. There it is. There's the email generated. We will send that email. It's sent out. I just checked. It was received. So that is now in place. Let's recap here. We had an app that was on Lovable Cloud, and it was using Supabase edge functions, Supabase Auth, as well as the Supabase database for holding the information. We have taken that application and we have moved it over to render by first building our own auth, following the patterns that were described in the application. We built our own backend instead of the edge functions, but following those patterns. We ran it locally. We provisioned a database and pushed it all up to render.com. Now, your app may be more complex than this example, but the steps will be similar. The process, the flow that you're going through is pretty much the same. So go ahead and follow these steps if you're in this situation. Of course, if you get stuck, use the link below this video to book a time to talk with me and my team. We're very happy to help you move your application and walk you through complexities that might exist that weren't in this demo. As always, if you found this useful, please go ahead and follow the channel, like the video, and potentially share it out with someone else who could use it.